Hey guys, it's Karen, my review for Vox Lux. And what Vox Lux is essentially about is we center on this character of Celeste, and Celeste is someone who, when she was 14, one second she's a normal high school student coming back from winter break, and suddenly tragedy strikes when this catastrophic school shooting ends up happening. It kills many people in her school, including her music teacher, and she is one of the only people to survive. However, this is a tragedy that, she's very much changed by, and through performing a song in honor of the victims of this, shooting, she ends up being recruited by this music producer, and the rest of the film is basically seeing how this really starts to affect her life, the changes that she undergoes, and that's really all I'm going to say. So Vox Lux overall, I was really interested in this film. I thought this looked like a very interesting look at stardom, but also at the idea of how a tragedy can shape a person, can actually kind of benefit someone. I thought that was a really cool idea. The acting, all the performances here looked really great and things like that. And coming off the heels of A Star Is Born, I heard many say that this is like A Star Is Born, but it's saying something different about the music business, and I was very interested in getting into that. And look, I know this film has been getting a lot of praise, and to be honest, I really was not a fan of Vox Lux. There are definitely things to like about it. It's not a terrible movie, but overall, this is a film that I just felt really underwhelmed by. I walked away wanting a lot more from it, and we're just getting to right now, starting off with the cast. And look, I will say that most of the acting here is pretty good. Mostly everyone does do a very good job. The standout right now for me is Raffey Cassidy as the younger version of Celeste, who I thought was great in this film. I've really liked her in things like Tomorrowland, The Killing of a Sacred Deer, but this film really proved to me the talent that she really does have. And a lot of it is just through quietness. Like, this is a character that is very kind of to herself, and she's very reserved, but you can see how this tragedy has affected her, what it's really done to her, especially in this one scene she has, in the film, in this hotel room, I thought was extremely effective, and Cassidy did a very good job here. You also see how overwhelming this turn really is for her. I mean, one second she's just this normal high school girl, suddenly she's like this big celebrity, and I thought she did a very good job with that. I really like what she did here, and Cassidy continues to impress me as an actress. Natalie Portman, on the other hand, I was not impressed by. I honestly thought she was way too over the top in this movie. And I understand, like, it's supposed to be a choice for the character, but when Cassidy was doing it, it felt very effective, and it felt like, okay, that's the way someone would react. When Portman does it, it feels very cartoony, and I just don't really think it worked here. It doesn't help that the two portions of Celeste, they don't feel like the same character. Like, I understand, obviously, she's going to change when she's an adult, but this really just felt like a completely different person. I really was not the biggest fan of Portman in this film. I usually love her in everything. I think Annihilation, she did some truly spectacular work in that, but here, it just really fell flat for me. I really was not a fan of her at all. I thought she was honestly really annoying at points. One scene with her, especially when she's breaking down, it just came across as laughable. I really was not a fan of her. You definitely get the sense, like, who Celeste is, and you understand the passion she has for singing and things like that. That's definitely there, but overall, I did not think Portman was that great here. However, the rest of the cast does do a very good job. Besides Raffey Cassidy, Stacey Martin is very good as her sister, who really is sticking by her throughout all of this. She's actually the person who really gets her invested in music and things like that. Jude Law is very good, although he is a bit underused. We'll get to that more with the writing, but he definitely does do a very good job here. Jennifer Ehle is really good. Really, the whole cast, besides Portman, is very good here. However, now, unfortunately, we're going to get to the stuff that I really wasn't too keen about, which is the directing and the writing. Now, Brady Corbet, I haven't really seen anything else that he's done before, but after this film, I'm really not that impressed by his style here. His directing for this film It's definitely purposeful. Like, I will say there are definitely points where it works very well. The first half especially, I think he does a very good job with generating this sense of tension and this sense of suspense, because even when Celeste is becoming this celebrity, that tragedy does not leave her mind. She's constantly thinking about it. It seems to be affecting everything, and it's, compromising her entire life, and I thought he did a very good job with that. When it came to the second half of the film, though, which is more of like a satire on Hollywood, it just didn't really work as well. Those two halves are extremely jarring, and it was not a very natural tonal shift. I really don't think Corbett knew what he wanted this movie to be. It seemed to me like he had a bunch of ideas on paper, which we'll get to them more the writing, but he had a lot of ideas here, and he just didn't really know which one he wanted to focus on, and that's really the issue we run into when it comes to the writing, because like I said, the directing, it's not really that great. It's not very strong or anything like that, but the writing especially is my biggest problem, is that this film in general, it just feels very scattered. It doesn't seem to know what it really wants to be, and it sucks because there are things that I really do love here. Right off the bat, the first scene of this movie is phenomenal. Everything about the way this movie starts, it's great. It's so frenetic. It comes out of nowhere. It perfectly sucks you into the environment, and it just feels so urgent, and you definitely feel like this is a big deal. The problem is, that's the only scene in this movie where I felt that sense of urgency, where I felt that sense of tension. The rest of the movie just did not really feel that way to me. And again, that scene is so great. Like, the way they set it up with all the kids sitting in the classroom and they're just going about their day, and then all of a sudden this kid comes in and it just quickly turns into this just horrific turn of events. And again, I don't want to get into it too much, but it's crazy to say the least. I mean, I was expecting it because I already knew about it going into the film, but if you didn't know about it, I can't imagine the type of reaction you're going to have. I mean, it comes out of nowhere, and they definitely do not prepare you for it, and I like that. I like that, Corbett wasn't afraid to get really dark and things like that. My problem with the film comes, like I said, with the rest of the movie, because immediately after this shooting, we do have some scenes where they're in the hospital and things like that, because she does have this, I believe it's like scoliosis or something from her neck, because of where she was shot, and she has to, like, wear this thing on her neck for the rest of her life. But after that, we cut to her singing the song, and then it abruptly cuts to her working with this record producer and working with a character known as simply the manager, and her, like, recording the song, and I thought I missed something. Like, there were many points in this movie where I'm like, am I missing something here? Was there something crucial that happened that I just wasn't paying attention to? And no, it's really badly edited in that way. It's just the writing in general, it's not very good. And the biggest reason for that actually isn't just Brady Corbett. The biggest reason for that is the choice to have Willem Dafoe, of all people, do the narration here. Now, in theory, this seems like a really good idea. Dafoe has a very good narrator voice. He's very powerful, but he has no place in this movie, and that's mainly because most of the time they use him as a way to skip over key events in Celeste's life. He'll often say something, and you have no idea what he's talking about. There are things that he'll say, and you're just like, oh, that happened. I mean, I kind of wish I would have seen that. Like, for example, he talks a lot about what happened between Celeste and, her sister, played by Stacey Martin, which honestly I kind of wish was the key relationship of the entire film, because that stuff is really interesting, but again, a lot of it does get glossed over because of that, and then when we cut to the second half, something he says, it'll just, like, contradict it, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense. There's a lot of time jumps in this film, and it just didn't really work for me. It felt like there were a lot of events being skipped over, and I just really wasn't a big fan of that, and like I said, a lot of the time, his narration, it just felt very overbearing. It felt like they were just using him as a way, as like a tell, don't show advice. Like, a lot of the time, he's just saying events that happen that I much rather would have seen play out in real life. It's the perfect example of a show not tell thing, which I've gone on so many times about. It's not even worth talking about here, but it's one of the most, I think, important things in any movie. You want to show what you're talking about. You don't just want to say it, because saying it is one thing, actually seeing it happen and, the way it all played out is much more effective. And there were many things in this movie that if they would have actually shown it, I think it could have been a lot more effective in that way. Also, another big problem I have with this movie is that while I do think they do a good job of setting up the trauma that Celeste endures, I never really felt like we zeroed in on much as, as much as we could have. Like I said, there's a really great scene in this movie, in the first half of it, when Raffey Cassidy, she's in this hotel with this guy who she's likely about to have sex with, and she's recounting about, her experiences and how this has affected her. And I was like, wow, this is a really great, realistic portrayal of PTSD and what this would do to an individual and how this would affect them in their everyday life. Unfortunately, we never get another scene like that, and especially when it comes to Portman, I mean, her stuff, it's just not very believable. The way she goes about things, it just doesn't feel like the same type of character. The mannerisms, like I said, they're just not there, and it just didn't work as well. And I think another big problem with it is that for some reason, they also have Raffey Cassidy play her daughter in the second half of this movie, and I think that was also a very big mistake because you can definitely see the stark contrast between the two there, and it just kind of made me wish like Raffey Cassidy just played a 36-year-old Portman, or they could have gotten someone else to play her daughter, because whatever they did here, it just simply did not work at all. I just wasn't really a fan of that. Also, like I said, once the movie gets to that second half, that's really when this went downhill for me, because the first half I was at least interested in. The second half very quickly lost me. There are a lot of things that are told to us in the first half, and then they show them in the second half, and you're like, where did this come from? Why are these characters here? What's really going on? They don't do a good job of setting up what's happening. There are attempts to do some interesting stuff. Like, they set up some interesting stuff between her and her daughter, and that they kind of have this rocky relationship. But again, they just kind of set it up. They don't really delve into it all that much, and I wanted more there. But again, we have to have annoying Willem Dafoe narration tell us exactly how we're supposed to feel in that given moment and exactly what's supposed to happen there. And it just, it really did not work. It really annoyed me, honestly. And the way the movie ends, it just doesn't feel very satisfying. It feels like there should be a lot more there, and there's not. Also, Jude Law's character, the manager, they make it seem like he's gonna have some really interesting stuff with Stacey Martin's character, but again, that just gets brushed aside because then they do the time jump, and that's never really talked about again. So again, there's so many things that they could have delved into more, but they're just swept under the rug, and I just wasn't really a fan of that at all. The cinematography here, I will say, is really good. There are some really great shots in this film, especially the, like I said, the mass shooting scene, definitely. It's very effective, and they handle that very well. But the scenes where Celeste is performing towards the end of the movie are really well done. You definitely feel like you're at a concert. You get that, you get the feel they want you to, and they do a good job with that. There are definitely some really great shots within this movie. The one scene I already talked about in that hotel room, stunning cinematography there. I love the way that was done. I think that was probably my favorite scene in the movie, right next to the mass shooting scene, because like I said, those were the two scenes I felt the most from. So again, cinematography is really good. The score is fantastic here. I really love the score in this movie. Though I will admit, while I enjoyed it, I do think it was a little over-bloated at points. There were many times in this movie where Celeste is talking about something really emotional, and you have this, really, godly score playing in the background. It's just... It was a little too obnoxious and a little too bombastic for what was going on, and I think they could have maybe toned that down a bit. Again, I like the score. I think it's a really great score, and when it's used well, it's used really well, but I do think it does undermine some of the emotional beats in the film. The editing in this film is, like I said, it's kind of a mess. I mean, it frequently will jump in time. There's a really off-putting editing choice in the first half of this movie. There's one thing that Celeste and Stacey Martin's character learn, and then they just cut to this shot of them in a music video, and it really rubbed me the wrong way. There's a lot of things in this movie that were very much like that, and the last 20 minutes of this movie is the worst thing ever. It is this huge concert that Celeste is performing, and look, you guys are gonna say I'm hypocrite. It's hypocritical of me to say that because of how much I love the ending of Bohemian Rhapsody, but here's the thing. The ending of Bohemian Rhapsody, it felt like that was the crescendo of the movie. It felt like that was the best way for the movie to end. Vox Lux, once we get to this concert, the movie screeches to a halt. It feels like they forgot that there was story. They forgot that there was more to do, and they just kind of focus on this concert. And the last line of dialogue also that William Dafoe leaves us on in this narration is laughably dumb. I mean, I honestly was cracking up, and I could because I was the only one in my theater, mind you, which again, I don't want to put a dampener on this movie. Like, I don't want to say don't see it because there was no one in my theater. Like, it definitely has an audience for sure. But again, the editing was just kind of all over the place. Like I said, Vox Lux overall was just a really big disappointment. There were a lot of things I really wanted from this movie that I unfortunately just didn't get. Raffey, Cassidy, and Stacey Martin are both really good here. They have some really great work in the film. Jude Law is very good. Natalie Portman, though, I just thought was way too hammy. She really didn't feel realistic in the setting. It felt very cartoony. And again, I understand maybe that was supposed to be her character, but it just didn't really work. There's a lot of awkward time jumps throughout the film. The film skips a ton. There are some really effective scenes. Like I said, I think the film is worth seeing for that opening scene especially because it is so well done. But other than that, you know, and some good performances, there's not really a lot for me to recommend here. I was very disappointed by this film overall. I would say check it out. It's definitely not for everyone. I mean, you should know going in, this film has not one, but 2 mass shootings, and they're both very graphic and very real, and they don't cut away from them. And, just overall, I was not a fan of this film at all. I think it definitely could have been a lot longer. I think you could have nixed the Dafoe narration entirely. I have no problem with the narration, but they should have gotten someone like, say, Natalie Portman to narrate this film. I think it would have made a lot more sense if they did that. Even if Stacey Martin narrate the film, I think it would have made a lot more sense from a narrative perspective because we really don't know why Dafoe's even narrating this film, but overall, I was very let down by Vox Lux. It's not a terrible movie, but it is a movie that I wanted a lot more from, and I am going to give Vox Lux overall a C. Very disappointed by this one overall. I was expecting to really enjoy this one a lot, and I was very much let down by it, but again, I know there's an audience for it. It did not work for me, but either way, guys, if you are interested in Vox Lux, let me know what you guys thought of it overall, left your thoughts in it. I still would recommend it because I do think it definitely is really different, and I definitely do enjoy that, but it's just nothing that I really could ever see myself watching again. But that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed. We'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.